here in our Western society, especially in Europe, the medical system has become kind of, it's, everyone expects it to be there and expects it to be as perfect as can be. And then they get a bit disappointed if they're not fully treated in the, exactly, and treated in the way they expect to be treated. And nowadays, with the way we live, I find the biggest issue is that we as people, as human beings, we have unlearned to live healthy and to take care of ourselves. So in the past, the knowledges that have been given down from our grandparents and parents in the way we live, in the natural way to take care of your health and your own beings, that has been diminished. I think most people, as we spoke before, our lifestyles has changed in a way that we have less knowledge of our own bodies, of our own minds. We are more focused on the exterior world. We want everything to be quick and fast. Even if we go to a doctor, we want a fast fix. Plus, we now go online and see, put in our symptoms, and we already know what we have and what we want and what we need as therapy in that. While most people, if you do offer a holistic approach to a certain illness or individual difficulty, I realized most people do not have the time or capacity to actually be compliant with the treatments you'd have to do for yourself. Because you can do everything in a very natural way, but because we don't have that knowledge of our own system anymore, and most people don't have that time, they work 9 to 5, they don't have the time to stay at home with their children or to do hot warm therapy, to take certain plant medications or do inhalations, or it takes a lot of work to be.
You have to be part of your own healing.
Exactly.
Yeah?
And in order to be part of your own healing, you have to invest time and effort and energy and learn and put the knowledge into that. And I think especially in our Western society, we have unlearned that, and we have kind of that expectancy that that is dealt with from the outside world, and we get the quick fix, And if we go to a doctor,
So that responsibility of me maintaining my health, eating well, dedicating time to the things that are important for my well-being, if someone else does it for me, then I can just fuck off and run and do other things that are more important for some people or other things that are more pleasant for some others. Yeah.
Exactly. And at the same time, also, if that goes wrong, if the quick fix by the doctor does not go wrong, you have someone to blame or put the effort on, like being actually involved in your own health, let's say, not so much in the being ill is always a difficult thing, especially because it's also very emotional and it's scary, and but we have unlearned how to stabilize our health and to stay strong in that. So if we try to seek out help in that way and it doesn't work because you're not involving yourself and you're not putting that effort in it, it's always easier to put the responsibility on on someone else or a system or anything like that.
And what is the separation? Because I was thinking, if you had to work hard, there was a time that tool for you to work hard was still your body or some extension of your body. But now that the money, the business, the livelihood comes from not using your body, it seems that we have created like the body is not necessary unless it's broken. But as long as it's basic, it seems like the division between mind and body has become bigger,
Yeah.
So then by living in our minds, we forget to maintain the base. But does it express mostly through diet? Where do you see the biggest lack in terms of the lifestyle that we have? Is it connection?
Mostly in the diet and the way we eat, but also in
The way we don't move, maybe?
exactly less sports, but also the fastness about life. Most people, when I speak to them and ask them, especially now that I do acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine, the questions that we ask patients are completely different to Western medical medicine. Western medicine usually treats more the symptoms. We do go into finding the causes, obviously, but for the primary moments, it's to relieve pain or to release the symptoms that people have. Whereas traditional Chinese medicine, for instance, focuses much more on the actual lifestyle, how you sleep, how you feel, what what kind of diet you take in, how you move. We focus a lot on that, and I've realized recently, the more I'm going into the more holistic approach, I see that most people don't live for themselves anymore. We live for an exterior motive, as in to get enough food in order to get enough money in order to support our lifestyles, which most people, not us, we live in nature. We're quite privileged in that sense that we can always be with fresh air and walk around barefoot and do our sports. We have the ocean right in front of our door, and we have all the food we need in our gardens and things like that. But most people don't have that. If you look into the cities, people live with unnatural lights, with neon lights. They go to work from 9 to 5. Everything goes really quick. They move around with their cars. They hardly have time to do any sports or be in nature or in a normal, healthy surrounding. They eat quickly because you don't have time. So
That
all
lack of
these
time
fast
seems,
food businesses
yeah, it
and
seems to be at the center of so
yeah,
many things, yeah.
yeah, and so whatever you take in is also that which makes your body whole. So if you take in bad diet or fatty foods or things that our bodies are not made to use. These are all unnatural products, French fries or sugars or anything like that. Then obviously our energy goes lower, and we need more of any type of stimuli
And the
to.
first thing would be, if you had a little time, you would be able to see the symptoms before maybe you develop all the way until you're sick, yeah?
Yeah,
But you would feel like this food affects me in this way, and when I give myself time to go for a walk, I sleep better, or whatever it is, but it would require a certain reflection time where you can actually see
yeah,
your patterns and the results of your patterns. But if you're all day on the clock, it's very difficult to,
yeah.
yeah.
It's really difficult to focus on anything about
Yeah, like
yourself.
I've had these conversations, let's say, about relationships and looking at what you can do to improve your relationship. At some point, it's always, yeah, but it takes time. Or if you're going to develop your yoga practice, or if you're going to develop whatever it is, it takes time. And that seems to be the currency that we're all running short on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
And then
Unfortunately,
if you export that, the lack of time of us, how does it, how is that translating to the next generation? Because if already we come with this lack of time on ourselves, do we have time to pay attention to our children? Or do you see that that is also another line of lack in the next generation and the attention that they receive? Because your specialty is on children,
on
eh? You're a
children, yeah,
pediatrician, yeah?
yes, yes. Yeah, it's maybe not. Yes, and it is mostly time actually, but it's also the stresses of life in itself, because we are so connected with the whole world by now. It's not just our in the past, let's say from our grandparents' life, they were, you could focus on your family, on yourself and your family. You had more time in general. There were more jobs available. There was more money for every individual person. Let's say outside of the war times, obviously. And the focus was more on the natural way of living. You lived, you woke up every day, you went to work in order to get enough money to survive and to support your family. But everything was a bit slower and you had more time for all these things because we weren't so much involved with, we didn't have phones, if you made an appointment with someone, you would
Have to
either
be
show
there.
up and you had to be there, or
And
you
wait
couldn't
sometimes.
change things in the last moment, and things were much easier, simpler. You didn't have to think so much in everything else apart from the moments you were in, and that also belongs to, like, I remember with my parents when we, obviously they're doctors, so it might be a little bit different, but if we were sick, we would do everything possible in order to treat ourselves at home.
Yeah.
So even if my parents did not have time, they went to work or something, they would teach us what to do in order to support our health. And then they would leave us at home and we would have to do the inhalations and eat these certain things and, put those, warm sponge on that part of the body. And but we had the time to do so. Nowadays, I feel,
And also the appreciation sometimes, I think, because besides the time, to me, it feels I have a bit of a cold. So if I made myself some ginger, lemon, honey, it feels better than taking an aspirin.
yeah,
It feels, it's still dealing with the symptom in a different way, but I'm somehow, yeah, first of all, I'm doing it myself in a way, and it feels an extension of maybe caring for yourself or treating yourself gently, um, rather than going to someone else and ask for them to fix me until I don't know. Yeah, if I don't know and I'm in need, yeah, we all have to have that humility to outsource when we are really, really in need. But yeah, it feels beautiful that you would be able to tell your children, this is the way we do it in case this happens or that happens. But yeah, that requires appreciating it and also what you say, yeah, having the time.
yeah, and taking the time for that.
Yeah.
I find most people, like I said before, it's not so much that we don't want to do it. It's firstly our lifestyles that are not allowing us to have that time, nor the capacity to actually learn how to do that,
Yeah.
to take care of ourselves. And then secondly, and the most important, is that we don't know what it means to be fully healthy. I think
Like we
because,
don't remember it anymore.
yes,
Yeah.
because our whole worlds are, or yeah, the way we live by now, the focuses on so many things outside of our body and mind, and that, like you said, we only realize that something is going wrong when we become ill, but that is already actually way too late. Where my work, or where I like to focus on right now or in the recent years, is to find a way to teach people to go back into themselves and see themselves as a whole being. We're not just our physical body, and we're not just the pain that occurs when you ignore yourself long enough. But our hearts are connected with our soul, with our minds, and if we don't treat our stresses that occur during everyday life, as in with work, with relationships, with our children, with family, with friends, with all these things, then our systems can get so undeveloped that then illnesses can occur. And since we have lost our knowledge on that, most people I know, if you ask them about their herbal remedies or the way they can support themselves, they don't know these things anymore, you know? Like,
Yeah.
the quickest way to deal with yourself is to just ignore everything that is happening until the moment where your bodies don't work anymore. But I find the bodies are actually just a mirror of our mind, so they can hold on to quite a lot of things and take in a lot of things until a certain point where its limit has been crossed. Then the symptoms occur, no? Then we feel a pain or something like that, and then the easiest way to cope with that is just to take a medication that
Yeah.
that pushes that pain down, while the actual cause of it, the stress or the
Remains.
emotional issues or something, remains.
Yeah. But I feel like as you were speaking, I was when you were talking about home remedies, I was thinking about my mother. So my grandmother, her mother, she had so much knowledge. And sometimes I talk to my mom and she still knows a little, but she would refer to my grandma as how much she knew. But then yet my mom grew in the village, and growing in that environment, for her to move away from it and go to the city and achieve the status of whatever it meant to be in a city and live in an apartment and all that, she really, really wanted that.
Mm-hmm.
And later on, when I talked about living in nature, I remember one time my mom told me, but nature is poverty. And, and I'm thinking, this is 3 generations. So I find very interesting that you have kind of like the holistic and then the acupuncture side, or even the appreciation of the remedy side with the more proper doctor dimension. Because one thing that I seem that we always fail is into bridging the two worlds.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a pendulum that swings from being a tree hugger to being a super technological city dweller. And I don't know, it seems like we could use a little tolerance to see the benefits of the other from the other side as well, because like you say, you can idolize or fantasize about how amazing it is to be healthy in the village until you have a cat and you need to go to urgencies and you die in the way because it's 500 kilometers away.
Exactly.
But yeah, the ability to appreciate what is good from both worlds
Mm-hmm.
and integrate it. So I wonder if are they doing that? Are they doing like attempts of bringing cutting edge new science, new medicine, and bringing in as well all that we know from the old? Besides you.
Yeah, no, they, as in the medical system, is, yes. I find it more now listening to you. I realize that it used to be like that. You know, that's what I mean. I think in the past, the way I saw, well,
Well, maybe, yeah. Maybe you would
my
go to the
family
doctor and they would
is
also give you some tea at the same.
exactly,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
My family is a family of doctors, and my grandfather was a doctor. He was my soulmate, and we're very similar. And both my parents. And I remember even from my grandfather, was one of the best known doctors in his environment. He worked in the countryside, so he worked in the mountains and he did emergency work and things like that. And I remember every time I went for a walk with him or drove a bicycle around, everyone would know him, and he knew everyone. He knew the stories of every family. He knew the grandchildren, the children, the adults. You know, he's been accompanying them for his whole life, and I remember every time we met someone on the road, I would be so proud because everyone would come with their problems to him, even if they just met walking in the streets. And he would always, first of all, be available, even if it wasn't his time of work. He was outside in the streets, and because someone came up for him for help, he would immediately take his time, sit them down, ask them questions, and then he would always offer to try it with a natural remedy first, and then follow up as a doctor and see where their ailments are and whether they've managed to cope with it themselves or not, or whether they need more treatment. And this is how I got to know medicine. Medicine is that, it's the last resort to difficulties in our lives that we cannot cope with ourselves. And
But how
in the
beautiful that,
past, we used to have that. We used to
yeah,
get all these remedies and knowledges, like when you have an ear infection, to put
yeah,
half an onion on your ear. To those things, we had that from our grandparents. They always did that. So there were those moments that someone actually needed Western medicine, were moments where Western medicine can also really make a big, big difference and was good. So, and yeah, in the past also antibiotics or something weren't necessary to use that often because people were generally healthier. We took more care of ourselves and we had more capacity to deal with our ailments by ourselves. So the treatments were also not as invasive or as quick as nowadays. No? And now it's changing a little bit. I can see that because it's been going to just being a quick fix for every ailment. So I remember in the hospital I was a bit annoyed in working in Germany in the hospital because people would really come with everything to the emergency hospital, in a university hospital. They would come with if their child just hit their head somewhere and had a blood spot, they would rush to the emergency room, and believe that the child is going to die because the access is there and it's easy accessible. But we have, what I meant is that they have lost the capacity to know what is really an emergency, what is a really dangerous thing for themselves, or where they can
yeah.
cope with these things by themselves.
And that also has to do with that, what we said before, this ability of being self-reliant to a certain degree and not have this sense of being always made of glass. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
And also, I mean, it's happening with everything that we got to a certain point where it's like we passed the line.
Yeah.
We came from, we need more hygiene, we need better medicines, but let's appreciate where we're coming from. And you're describing a moment that maybe there was some sort of symbiosis between the two worlds, but we kept going
We kept
until,
rushing.
yeah,
Yeah.
and the lack of time is also at the center of almost everything. This image of your grandfather, you said, yeah, like he had the time,
Yeah.
yeah, and that time also allows him to have a moment where he feels part of the community.
Yeah.
It's like he's part of that environment where he's important and he's loved and he is a node of the network. Yeah.
Yeah, but also again because he took his time to be with
Yeah.
every patient, no? So
Yeah.
every one of his patients was like his family. He knew them better than his own kids in that way, no? Like
Yeah.
and that I find is medicine. No matter what type of medicine we do, the most important is as a doctor is to be to listen, to be there when it's needed, and to know or to find out what is best for this certain individual, because not every medicine is the same. You might react to something different than your mother or your sister or your neighbor. Like not everyone. It's not so black and white as we put it nowadays, and I feel also the loss of trust in the medical system is a very big thing, which lead us to try ways of treating ourselves which are not very healthy. I see that as
Okay.
well. And plus, again, the illnesses and the way we live have changed as well, in the way that, like you said, with disinfecting everything. On the one side, it's good that we have that knowledge of hygiene and disinfection, especially in the medical sector. treatments of diseases, but at the same time, what that causes at home, if you disinfect everything, like in COVID times, we realized that, no, that everyone was constantly washing their hands and cleaning themselves, not being in contact with the earth around us, with animals, with other human beings. The whole immune system just goes down, no? Like the
Yeah, because you
more
keep this isolation, yeah?
exactly,
You keep
we
bubbling
isolate
yourself.
ourselves. We're in with unnatural lights. We're outside of nature. We do not have contacts with animals or with any type of dirt. So all the children I see have more allergies. They have more difficulties with their immune system. They get sicker way more often than in the past. And I remember, I mean, in Africa when we grew up, we ate earth. We ate soil every day. We were playing naked and outside with all the animals and always in contact with other people, always in contact with the soil, with dirt, with
Because that's where we come from
yeah,
eventually,
with
yeah?
all these things. And therefore my family, at least, and I specifically, I have no allergies. I was always quite healthy in that sense because yeah, my system was made to be in contact with everything that can influence yeah, myself.
Yeah, because I had the same with my parents. My parents, because of that movement from the village to the city, and they really took to hygiene. Yeah, so all the washing your hands and all the always useful and always healthy. Yeah, but I could feel this. Yeah, I've always felt it. This almost running away from the natural environment because it's dirty, and needing to isolate yourself from all the dangers of the natural world in terms of dirt and in terms of different kinds of dangers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but do you see in that progression from the natural world to what you describe now, there is a human tendency of sometimes not knowing when to stop in refining something. You make it easier and then easier and then easier, and then one day you realize it's so easy that it's no longer fun. Yeah. But did you ever feel pushed from within the profession, or did you ever feel that there were interests that are trying to create this kind of situation? Did you ever, either the pharmaceutical companies or the hospital management, is there any interest in the medical profession being in the way that it has been in the last few years, or do you see just an evolution of how the tendencies of human beings are?
It's
I've
difficult
heard.
to answer because it's so many different entities. What I think most people don't understand is that the pharmaceutical company has, or pharmacies, for instance, industry, has very little to do with doctors being doctors, for instance. Yeah?
Okay.
The institution of the hospitals and the health system also, they are the institution that the doctors work in, but it's not the same system. So the pharmaceutical companies, obviously, they are looking more for profits. So anything they try to put on the market is for their own profits, for the goods of,
But you never
of
felt that there
money.
was a pressure of pushing this medicine instead of that medicine, or some sort of incentive that would make you do things that are not ideal for the patient?
It is sought to be that way, but it's really not. All the
Okay.
doctors I know, from my side, to be honest, like, first of all, we have rules that we are not allowed to go to a certain, just with one company or another.
Okay. Also, in
And
Europe
we,
might be different than in
in
America, no?
exactly, exactly. Most important is to know that every place is a bit different now. And I'm speaking more from the Western
European, yeah.
European medical world. But yeah, in the past we had a lot of you know, yeah, the pharmaceutical reps coming to the hospitals, giving a little present, and then the doctors would take
Okay.
that medication. That is known to have been that way.
And that got stopped.
But that got stopped from
Good old
lawfully
Europe.
seen. You're not allowed to take any types of bribes, or
Okay.
even if a patient wants to say thank you to the doctor that operated them, we're not allowed to accept anything but chocolates, for instance. So in that sense, it is protected, that the patients are protected that way by law. That, yeah, you cannot take up one patient because of money or any type of bribes or anything like that more than others, or go for a certain pharmaceutical thing. But I know that certain institutions work with certain pharmaceuticals. So in 3 different types of if you take an antibiotic, for example, then one hospital works with that type of antibiotic and the other hospital with that type. Yeah? But it's the same antibiotic, it's just a different company rep
But
to it.
most importantly, the decision of actually recommending that antibiotic, that is
That
not
comes
forced.
from the
That comes from the doctor,
doctor in
and then
itself.
maybe once you decide that there is
Exactly.
this brand or that brand.
Exactly. But I've heard it a lot from patients, and that's where I meant with the trust in doctors has faded or has become differently. But I think it's more because we have more access to knowledge, and now with AI telling you what to do, I have a lot of patients that come that have looked up their symptoms online first, and then they come to me and they tell me exactly what they need. So they come and say, I have this and I need that and that treatment.
And then you become the one that can give them the prescription because you have the license.
Exactly, but
Then you are
their
being used in a
expectation,
way.
exactly, their expectation is that they come to me, they tell me exactly what they need, and they get what they want. Those type of patients I usually send away and say, well, if you actually know what to do, then you don't need me anymore. No, you can deal with it yourself, because again, nothing. I find it quite dangerous with the AI, especially in regards to medicine, because not everyone is the same. Not all symptoms, you cannot generalize the symptoms as such. And the actual things that we have learned as a doctor, I mean, I've studied for 10 years, and it's not just because, to get a certain reputation or anything like that. Medicine is a huge, 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 huge topic as such. You have to know loads of things. It's so versatile and so big. And even if you have the knowledge of the textbook, once you see the patient, it's a completely different world. So I studied for a long time, and then I became a doctor. And the first patient I had, I thought, I have no clue what I'm doing. No, like, you learn by doing. You learn by seeing more people, because every individual is so different that also the treatment is always different. So yes,
And
the
also in the
doctors.
personal connection, there is a transmission as well that
Yeah,
it's, I guess, a variation of the placebo effect, but you feel cared for, you feel listened to if it's well done.
yeah,
And then, I mean, I've read studies that because the doctor is doing it when there was trust, already the medicine is working, even if it was
exactly.
a placebo, yeah?
Yeah,
Because you trust that the doctor is going to support you.
exactly.
So now if you go to the doctor with mistrust,
It has a negative effect
but
on your being as well.
I mean, I'm sure you're different, but from the perspective of the patient, last time I had a little scratch in the eye and I went to the ophthalmologist, and he was correct, but what you described was my experience. I think I was there for 10 minutes, and I think he looked at me 30 seconds of the 10 minutes, because the rest he was writing down, asked me one question, writing down. Then he put me in the machine for a second, and he was not negligent in any way, but I did feel like we were in a rush. And I did feel like he had a lot of things on his shoulders, and none of those things was I.
Yeah, that's the.
Yeah, I felt like this man is very busy, very stressed.
Yeah,
So I didn't feel like I wouldn't trust him, but whichever was the system that he was inserted in did not inspire trust.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. That's one of the big reasons I got out of working in the hospitals,
Yeah.
because it's yeah, it's a shame it's going that way, because most doctors I know, they don't want to work like that. For us, it's a big stress and it's horrible. No, you want to focus on the people and you cannot because of all the laws behind it and regulations. And also nowadays there's more people studying medicine but less people going into medicine. So that we have loads of students that study medicine but they go into research and all that because that gives more money and it's less stressful actually. But if you see the life of a doctor in a normal hospital here in Europe, you work like 60 to 80 hours a week. You have 24-hour shifts. You are constantly in like everyone around you needs you and non-stop, and you always have a huge responsibility because what you say is actually not just
It's
a little
interesting
support, it can
because
actually cause harm, you know,
yeah,
if
yeah,
you do something wrong.
yeah, a lot of
So in this
responsibility.
constant
Yeah, yeah.
stress environment, you're in.
It's interesting because I actually literally know it. I like for whatever reason, and in my field there is a lot of doctors, and exactly all that you say. Beautiful profession that they love, good money for the most part, kind of well recognized socially, and yet stressed out of their minds, often at the edge of burning out, no time,
Yeah,
often they themselves unhealthy because they don't have the
because you
time. Yeah,
don't have the time to.
it's
Yeah,
interesting that
so
that is the image of the person that is going to help you with your
yeah,
health. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
But that has become that way because of
common.
bureaucratic and financial issues
Yeah.
and just having too little personnel for too many people that come.
And then when you looked outside this frame for a more holistic approach, did you immediately land on acupuncture, or did you
No,
window shop for a bit until you found your
no,
way?
not at all. Like I said, like actually from childhood onwards, I was always quite holistically in the way I treated myself, in the way I've seen others and seen my patients, and then especially also working in the hospital in pediatric surgery. I also learned that medicine is not necessary in every case, in the sense that if an operation wasn't absolutely necessary, you wouldn't do it in a child. And, they heal most of the things themselves, and at least until the age of 10. And then it goes a little bit slower, and obviously in adults it's a bit different because we just don't have that growth factor anymore, and we don't heal as quick as before. But I realized in pediatric surgery specifically that even though we have certain things that we can do as doctors, there's no need to always give medications or to do an intervention or something like that. But I would start to recommend certain holistic or natural treatments, the ones that I've learned from my personal life or that I've read about or that I can see in compliance with in reliance of the parents and the child, what would do them best in that situation. But I realized back then, every time I offered that for the parents, most parents, they negated it, especially also already in the diagnostics. No? I'm very keen on not doing X-rays if it's not absolutely
Necessary.
clear that it will be a fracture. But even just offering that, that also means that I would have to see the patient again. So I would offer the parents and say, this is not absolutely necessary to do an X-ray. I would put the arm into a cast for 3 days, and in 3 days you come back. If the pain is still there, we do an X-ray. If not, we can take off the cast, and the child is fine. But because the parents are in stress and they have to work and they have to earn money and they can't stay at home and they can't watch their children, they would actually negate that and say, no, they want that X-ray or they want that antibiotics or they want that surgery or something like that in order
Because it's
to.
a little easier, yeah, or a lot
It's
easier.
a quicker recuperation, you know, like it's
Okay.
so even doing a surgery, you could avoid certain surgeries if the child goes to physiotherapy, if it's been seen by the parents every day, if they do certain exercises, if they take in a certain diet, if they can stay at home and not jump onto the next trampoline, and make sure
But
they
all of
can
that
watch
is
them.
a proactive cooperation with
Exactly.
life,
You
and
need to
that.
do a lot for that. No? And I remember trying that more and more in the hospital, because it was very clear to me that like medicine for me was always the last resort, and I'm happy to have learned it, and I know what to do if someone comes in with real difficulties. And like I said, Western medicine is incredible what we can do. We can save lives and do things that in any other type of medicine is simply looked at as magic. It is magic in that sense. Huh? But there's this discrepancy between, first of all, people actually accepting the fact that they have to take part in their own healing process, which is always difficult to see, and then the other side of the system not working and the doctors having too little time, that by now most doctors don't even take the time to say, look, there's a different approach. They just go, well, let's go through with this,
Which is
because it's faster for themselves and faster for the
in a
for
way,
the
it's the two
patient.
sides of the same coin.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But because of that, I was always quite, became quite skeptical of the ways we work nowadays. Also, in the time where I was working, it started differently, and then over time, I realized just everything is turning to become more like less money, less time, more stresses for the doctors, for the patients, less trust in the doctors. And I was always, wondering how that came to be.